Welcome back to On Point Politics, and today I want to talk about why Trump is the strongest Republican nominee and what the other candidates would get in a general election if they were to become the nominee. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend so we can get the channel out on the algorithm. We've had some very big momentum recently, went from 73 subscribers to like 296 in like 3 days. That's pretty insane, guys. And I'm really appreciative of all the support. I'm trying to get to 1K by the end of the month, but I feel like we might actually be able to get there before. So if you guys do want to, stay engaged with the content and be educated on political content in the United States before the election, please subscribe to the channel so you can keep up to date with everything that I have in store for you guys. And so without further ado, here we go. I want to like dispel the notion that people have that Nikki Haley would outperform Trump in a general election, as well as many of the other Republicans. I kind of want to get this over with just so the coping won't be as bad as, other, it won't be as bad as like it could be. And so clearly Trump has a big primary lead, and you guys already saw I have Trump at 286 to 252 electoral votes. We're going to be going over the electoral results that I have predicted for each of these candidates if they were to become the nominee. The first one is actually Vivek, and a lot of people, funny enough, for some reason, have Vivek underperforming Trump like a lot. Like they have him losing Texas to Biden, they have him losing North Carolina. I actually think that Vivek would be the second best nominee for 2024. I just think it would be a razor thin election, but I think Biden would narrowly edge him out in Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania because Vivek would just ever so slightly miss the turnout in the states that he would really need, like a Georgia and Pennsylvania, for example. Those are the ones that he'd probably win first before Nevada. The thing with Nevada is that it is more of a Trump Republican state more than like a Republican state on its own. So I feel like Nevada, in a scenario where Trump is not the nominee or the candidate is not Republican or Trump aligned, is going to have a hard time in Nevada. But I still think that this is really just due to name recognition. I think by the time we'd get to the election, a lot more people would know him. I just don't think he would be able to turn out a lot of the voters. I think his whole Hinduism thing, even though I personally don't have a problem with it, I think is going to turn off a subgroup of voters. And those voters are going to ever so slightly just not vote for him in the general election. He would barely lose the electoral college. The next one I have is Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis would massively underperform Donald Trump from the 2020 presidential election. I think Kansas would become like a 9 point win. I think Texas would be a 1 point win. Alaska would be much closer to be like a 3 point win. Florida, he'd do decent. I think he would still win it by the same amount that Trump would, but it really would only trend to the right because DeSantis would be the nominee. Georgia would be like a 3 point win for Biden. Arizona would be like a 4 point win. Wisconsin, like a 3.5. Pennsylvania, like almost a Fetterman type win. Michigan would be a 6 point win. Minnesota would be like a 10, 12 point win. Nevada here is like a 2.5 point win. And I think the reason why this would happen is Joe Biden would frame this election as a, referendum on abortion. And I feel like DeSantis has taken such a conservative stance that even though Joe Biden is massively unpopular, I still think that DeSantis would end up losing by the same amount that Trump did and almost lose North Carolina. But I don't think he'd lose North Carolina necessarily. Then for Christie, would expect just a complete fallout of the Trump base. At least with Vivek and DeSantis, some of the Trump voters come out, but here barely any of the low propensity Trump voters would come out. Christie would barely hold on to Ohio, would barely, oh, I forgot to fill out DC, would barely hold on to Ohio. North Carolina would be a 3 point win for Biden. Now, you got to understand that these scenarios would be really low turnout scenarios. Like, this would be a super low turnout election. Biden would probably hit like 70 something million votes, something like that, like 72, 73 million. And Christie would get like 65, 66 million voters. Like, he would not do well at all. At least with DeSantis, he'd get like 72 million votes and Biden would probably get like 76 million. And then with Vivek would actually probably get 73, but Biden would probably get like 78, 79 million voters. That's probably what I would guesstimate that at. Now, I'm actually going to go to the last scenario in a second, but you'll see Wisconsin would be like a 4 point win. Arizona's like a 4.5 point win. Georgia is almost likely here. Florida actually flips red before Texas because I think that Chris Christie does have this like weird appeal with like the anti-Trump Republicans, and I feel like there's a decent amount of them in Texas, enough to, push him barely over. I think he'd only win Texas by like a point. In Florida, he would lose it by like 4 points. I think he'd actually massively underperform in Florida. And he loses that congressional district in Maine as well. Now, for the last scenario, you have Joe Biden beating Nikki Haley at 122 electoral votes to 416. This is not a joke, guys. I actually think that Biden would basically destroy her in a landslide. And this is not assuming that there would be third party candidates. Obviously, there would be third party candidates. And in this scenario, I'd imagine RFK would actually probably get about 25 to 30% of the popular vote. I think RFK would do very well because basically all the Trump voters would pretty much just vote for RFK at that point. Nikki Haley is basically the most warmongering candidate in all of campaigning history. Even George W. Bush in 2000 didn't even campaign warmongering. That's why he was viewed as the non-interventionist candidate. That's why he was able to win New Hampshire while losing the Rust Belt. It was because he was viewed as the anti-war candidate. And so that really helped him out in New Hampshire. And then in the next election, he definitely didn't improve on that one. And you can see here, I have Biden winning Texas by like a point. Arizona, funny enough, I think that Nikki Haley, despite all of that, I think would actually retain some voters in the Sun Belt. I think she'd win, only lose Florida by two. So Chris Christie would actually do worse. I do think she loses Alaska by like a point. And you got to imagine Biden in this scenario would actually campaign as Nikki Haley being the World War III candidate, and that would completely flip the dynamic. I actually think if she was the nominee, his approval ratings would actually get much better, and all of the economic arguments you could use against Joe Biden would basically cancel out with Nikki Haley, even more so than Chris Christie. And so I feel like in this scenario, Biden's approval ratings would actually get close to like 48, 49%, and he'd probably match his 2020 performance. I think he'd get like 79, 80 million votes. I think he'd almost match his 2020 performance, whereas Nikki Haley would get like 68 million, 69 million. So she does actually get more raw total votes than Chris Christie does. So theoretically, Chris Christie would actually be the worst nominee because he gets the least amount of raw total votes. But I think that Nikki Haley would make more Biden voters turn out at the end of the day because of the whole anti-war stuff. I do actually think that Biden would win Minnesota by over 15 points. I think Colorado would be like a 19 point, 18 point win. It would be a massive win. I do think, funny enough, I think she does retain some voters in the Sun Belt. I think Arizona's only a 2 point loss for her, whereas here it's a 4 point loss for Chris Christie. I think Florida she only loses by two. She only loses North Carolina by one. So she does have that weird appeal where she does retain some voters and she almost wins Ohio and Iowa. And so really in reality, if you look at this, this is like a D plus like two victory for Biden. This is like a D plus four. It would basically be the same popular vote margin as the 2020 election. This would be like a D plus seven national environment, and this would be like a D plus nine national environment, D plus eight kind of national environment, theoretically. And so that's basically it, guys. These are all my hypothetical scenarios for all of the other Republican nominees if Trump were to not be the nominee. In my personal opinion, I would still vote for Vivek. I'd vote for Ron. I'd probably vote for Christie. I would really have to debate that one. I'd probably go for RFK at that point. And if Nikki Haley's the nominee, I would just straight up vote for RFK. Like, I would go, like, willingly be excited just to go out to vote for RFK. I actually might even do a map with the three of them and actually put down like what I genuinely think what would happen, because I feel like if this was the election, I think RFK would take away most of Nikki's voters. I think that RFK would actually do super well if Nikki Haley was the nominee. because effectively all those Trump voters would essentially just go to him. She would get no Trump support. Nikki Haley is so bad for the MAGA base that reports that have been coming out from the DeSantis camp that Nikki Haley is being vetted as Trump's nominee. And a lot of people were saying that if Nikki is Trump's nominee, they would straight up not even vote for Trump. And I would probably do the same because it would make me question everything that I thought about Trump. I would personally not vote for Trump if Nikki Haley was his VP nominee. I wouldn't even vote for him. I'd probably vote for RFK at that point. And alright guys, that's pretty much it for this video. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video out with a friend so we can get the channel out on the algorithm. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. On Point Politics, signing out.